Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, folks. Michael Zuber, one rental at a time, back with Lance Lambert, somebody I follow on Twitter. Fortune editor is getting the skinny on the real estate market from lots of different senior executives. How you doing, Lance?
Doing great. Housing. Always a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, I love that you've committed to be a part of the channel every week. I feel so appreciative because your reach into other areas is far greater than mine, and I feel like I get a little tease each week. So thank you for coming back.
Yeah, and I love coming on too because I can kind of better understand how the investors think and understand that side of the world a little better.
Awesome. Awesome. So today you put out, I think this was a tweet you put out talking about you had a conversation with an executive at CoStar and you asked, hey, are you glad you didn't move into the iBuyer arena? Why don't you share that tweet, his response, and we'll dig into iBuyers because I think that is something that's evolving very quickly.
Yeah, so I asked Andy, the CEO of CoStar, which is, they're a pretty big player, especially in the commercial side of real estate. I asked him if if he was happy that they did not get into iBuying because, Zillow, a competitor of theirs, in some spaces did, right? They made that play from going from an informational company in real estate to, hey, this isn't too hard. Let's go out there and, we can beat these little guys with our algorithm. And, of course, Zillow was overpaying for homes amid a boom and selling them at a loss
Yeah.
before the boom was even over. That's kind of interesting. Of course, Zillow notoriously ended its program in November and was able to sell all of its homes in a lot of these, what I would call the frothier markets. Think the Austins, the Boise's, the Phoenixes, the Vegases that are correcting harder now. They were able to sell them at the top. And their competitors, Redfin and Open Door, kept buying up, more of these homes, and now essentially got caught. Right, those
Yep.
markets are correcting faster, and it looks like the markets also, those markets are correcting faster because of iBuyers, and that's something Redfin CEO told me himself. Is the iBuyers, the builders, they're more willing to cut. And how it works for them is if it doesn't sell 2 weeks and they're in a market where prices are moving downward, there's downward pressure, they're going to go ahead and just cut another 2%. And so they're kind of speeding up that downward correction in those markets. And so I asked CoStar CEO if he was happy they didn't get in, and he said, tongue in cheek, but I'm dumb, but I'm not that dumb. So
I love that. I'm dumb, but not that dumb.
yeah, and Andy was great. He was very insightful in a lot of ways in what's going on in real estate. And he had said, he's very open, very candid. He had said that a company in the family of iBuying had reached out to them, seeing if they would be able to help them out. And he said no. I don't know what company that is. I also don't want to speculate either because I don't think that's fair to Andy.
No,
Or the other companies that could be out there, which are all kind of in a rough patch right now. And I don't know if it's an actual iBuyer or some type of company that does business with them, but he said a company in the family of iBuying. But things are tough for iBuying. Redfin has now also announced they're getting out, so they're selling the rest of their homes and getting out. And Open Door, what is their stock on from like $25 to $1, something like that? It's been
the joke is they'll be closed door soon enough. It's funny as an mom and pop investor, right? The somebody who knows a buy box, knows the area. I think there's a couple of things I want to say about iBuyers. So first off, I have pretty deep connections in the Phoenix market, right? People that I talk to weekly out there, and right or wrong, iBuyers in the Phoenix market became the what you can call the fish in poker. You were the person with dumb money, and the table was going to take your money. They were going to sort of gang up on you. So what was happening in Phoenix a year ago and 18 months ago was these people were locking up deals with mom and pop sellers. It's called wholesaling, right? And then they would sell it because they knew their buy box and they knew what they were looking for, and they knew how much they would overpay. So that run up, that extra 10 or 15% of Phoenix, Vegas, Austin, Sacramento list of a dozen cities was all because of iBuyers. And then everybody else got unfortunately hurt by it. If you were a homeowner and you were buying a property that wasn't going to an iBuyer, you were still competing in a market where iBuyers were dominating the purchases because they were overpaying. So I think there was, I'm going to guess 15 to 20% appreciation in a dozen markets that was completely fake, completely abnormal. And now, because I've been through a cycle before, it's going to come down, but it's even going to go lower because these buyers like Redfin, they're not emotional. They have a
Yeah.
spreadsheet, they have a process. Every two weeks we drop 2%. And then everybody's going to be hurt by this. But where I want people to realize is this too shall pass. They stopped buying, they will eventually stop selling, and then the market will recover. So yeah, so it probably feels really bad in Vegas, really bad in Phoenix, but it's almost over. It's almost over, and we will heal from this.
And so with those iBuyers, it's interesting. So I had also asked him point blank, the CoStar CEO, does he think that iBuyers will be around in 2 years from now? And he said, yes, they'll learn from the first version, right? But the cost of capital is going to go up a lot. And I believe he had said like the fees would move from like 5 to 7 to 20%. So I don't know if that last bit was his way of saying, and this is me speculating now, that no, they would not, because the cost of capital would move up so much. So I don't know, maybe they'll still be around. I don't want to speculate too much, but I do believe, like you had said, that they are having an actual impact on pricing in the markets, probably upward pressure one way and then downward pressure faster the other way. So, if this, could you imagine if the iBuyers had been around in the 2000s?
Oh, no, that would have been no, that would be crazy.
Yeah,
That's
like that.
frightening.
So they've added an element of risk, but the market is just not, there's just not as much risk in the market as there used to be. We've gotten rid of a lot of these things. So do they actually need to regulate it out, or is capitalism essentially regulated them out?
No, I think capitalism gets them out. And again, when you look at, because again, I've been buying in my market for 20 some odd years. In the moment, it feels like craziness, but when we look back on this in 5 or 10 decades, it'll be a blip. The other thing that I think is very, I don't know, good or bad, depending if you're there, is they've only impacted a dozen markets, but they've impacted them, to a great degree. But as somebody who looks at the median home price for the country, it doesn't really move. Like they have 1,000 units in Phoenix. 1,000 units in Phoenix is a problem, but 1,000 units in the United States doesn't move the needle.
Yeah. And yeah, that exactly on a national level, they just weren't as widespread as they could have been. This is the first version, right? They had just kind of came out with this in these 20 so markets, or 30. I forget what they actually got up to. But it does look like they had a significant impact in the places they were buying heavily.
It's really funny. Sorry to cut you off, but the other thing that's really funny is it seems like they all chose to compete in the top 5 markets. Like they were all in Phoenix. They were all in Vegas. Like who was in Columbus, Ohio? Right? I mean, if you really want to move the needle, go to a different market, right? I mean, I don't get it.
Yeah. Well, and then the interesting thing is then they become trouble for each other because they're each cutting prices so fast in the places like Vegas.
Again, it's both sides. They were competing for the same stuff to buy, and now they're competing for the same. Now when they're selling, they're competing for the same buyer. So yeah, it's comical to watch.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how it all kind of plays out. And then what happens with Open Door now? Can they survive this? Can they benefit long term if they're the only, iBuyer left?
No, they're done. Look at their balance sheet, cost of capital, liabilities to debt. Could they go through bankruptcy and reinvigorate themselves and be something better? But they've got to clean up their balance sheet. As an accountant, I've looked at their balance sheet. It's atrocious. Yeah, it's atrocious.
And I think financial markets, or say that too.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. Do me a favor, Lance. Where can people find you? I can't believe how much great content you put out on Twitter.
Well, I appreciate that. I try to, like when I look at something like the Case-Shiller data that comes out, I try to flip it from like multiple different angles and try to give readers a good perspective, or at least see it through many lenses. People can find me at News Lambert on Twitter, or they can Google Lance Lambert Fortune and find my author page.
And the thing, there was a series of posts you put out, tweets you put out the other day, talking about who's calling for a decline, who's calling flat, and who's calling for an increase. I thought that was a great list. You were missing one rental at a time. I just want to remind you that you were missing me. I'm just
Well,
saying.
yeah, that is true. So what I've been doing is I've been excluding the outlook. So your outlook, CoStar
Ah,
CEO actually was, he was pretty bearish. And then Bill McBride also, he has
oh
a
yes,
10% peak to trough decline. It's his personal outlook too. But
yeah.
I kind of, and I
I
hope,
understand. I was giving you a hard time. That's all.
yeah,
It's okay. I was just giving you a hard time.
I know.
Thanks, Lance. Take care.
I did realize I'm excluding NAR. And so I
Oh,
probably,
whoops. Yeah, that one's probably a good one.
but then, yeah, I
Uh,
also, take them with the most grain of salt of
oh,
everybody.
yes, absolutely. As you should. As you should. Thanks, buddy.